All right, first thing first, thank you so much, Amit, for taking your time out and joining us on the Growth Mindset podcast. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Amit, for people that might be coming across or listening to you for the first time, especially my audience, would you just like to quickly introduce yourself?
So, my name is Amit Pagedar. I'm a self-awareness teacher. I'm an author. I published a book a couple of years ago called Finding Awareness by the same name. And basically, I started writing about these things after undergoing a serious amount of suffering. And everybody listening might know that nobody wants to look inwards unless they suffer. And so I was going through life, just stumbling through life, going from through relationships or this or that, getting bullied by my boss at my work, all kinds of things going on in my life, health problems. And I came into this situation which I can only consider to be a crisis in my own mind. And the only answer was to understand myself at a serious depth. So then a journey began, which lasted 12 years, 13 years of writing, meditating. And then that grew into what I call finding awareness, this method of simply looking at yourself using self-awareness. So I started posting about that on Instagram. And thankfully, a lot of people read it. It reaches a lot of people. And so that's who I am. I am a writer and I talk about self-awareness, nothing more, nothing less. I don't
Mm,
promise anything greater than self-awareness. So if you're looking for enlightenment or awakening or consciousness or this or that, I'm not your guy. But if you want to understand yourself, let's talk. So that's who I am. And I live in, so about some personal things. I live in the US. I've lived here, I would say, for 17 years now. So if you're from India, yes, I was born and brought up in India, 21 years lived there. But I've lived in the US for so long, you can notice in my accent, I speak different. I don't sound like Indian. I don't have the Indian accent anymore, and it's not on purpose. So that's all I would say about myself. And yeah, that's about it. Let's
awesome.
talk.
Awesome. I mean, I like your work. I've seen your work. I've been following it for quite some time. Hence, I want to connect with you to kind of talk about this specific topic. You mentioned
Mhm.
something very important, that you had your crisis, and I think that's where people kind of, it's like a reality check that life gives you, and that's when you kind of become serious, and that's when you take an inward journey. Because when
Mhm.
everything else is going good around you, that's when you're not that concerned because everything is good, right? But when the time is when the things are difficult, it could be health wise, family wise, relationship wise, that's where we then try to kind of, we actually are more aware as to what who we are, and we take that journey. But let's start with, how do you define self-awareness? Because you've been doing this for a couple of years, you've had your experience. What is self-awareness to you?
So self-awareness is quite simple. It contains two words. One is the self, and the second is awareness. So let's look at the first word. What is the self? Most of us consider self to be, okay, this is my name, this is where I was born, this is my education. Well, that's just your identity. That's just your identification. You can put those things on a card when a cop pulls you over, a policeman pulls you over. That tells me nothing about you. Okay, so tell me who you are. What is the self? Then we start saying, okay, I like these things. I have such and such hobbies. I like such and such songs. But that's also superficial. See, because your songs will be determined by your friends. Whatever your friends listen to, you listen to. You read the books that your friends recommend. You watch the movies that your friends talk about. So where is you? See, who are you then? If all, you are just a bunch of influences, people, you want to be like a certain musician, then you start playing music like that musician. You want to be like a certain author, you start talking like that certain author. So again, that self is made up of so many influences. You want to be like your father, you want to be like your older brother or older sister, or you want to be like your mother. And so we are this combination of influences, and we carry those influences through us. But who are you underneath all those influences? And just simply asking the question, who are you? Who is the self? we start practicing self-awareness. See, because now what I'm doing is now I'm asking, okay, this thought is there in my mind because I want to be like a certain person, my friend, my family member, etc., etc. This thought is there in my mind because I'm trying to pursue a certain dream because somebody else told me this dream is worth having $1 million, owning a great house, becoming famous, or this or that, becoming a CEO, becoming a director. I'm just copying people. That's all I'm doing. So where am I in all this? See, so that is self-awareness. So awareness of what constitutes the self, what makes me up. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I have all these thoughts? And this begins, as you said correctly, because we realize we made mistakes. Why did I decide to enter a relationship with this person when they treated me so badly? Why did I do that? See? And then the mind starts questioning. And when I question, I realize, oh, I did this because they made me feel a certain way. Okay, why did they make me feel a certain way? Or because that feeling that they gave me of protection, of love, of affection, of feeling together, that is something I always missed. See? And why did I miss that? I missed that because I did not get that enough growing up. Or I missed that because all my friends around me have girlfriends or boyfriends, etc., and I felt alone. See? So my feeling of deficiency, of lack, of lacking something, my need was fulfilled by another person. So when my need is fulfilled by another person, I become attached to them and I enter a relationship with them without really questioning if this person is right for my mental health, for my happiness, for my long-term peace. And so then I have an insight. See, now I realize, oh, so that means I must not enter relationships just because somebody makes me feel a certain way. I must enter relationships only if I want to be with this person, if I am not leaning on them for something, if I'm not asking something from them, if I'm not depending on them, say for my emotional mental security. So now self-awareness, just observing my own thoughts, brought me to an insight. And that insight gave me a wisdom about how I'm going to live my life. See, so this is the process. This is self-awareness, watching your own thoughts, understanding what they are trying to teach you. And once you understand what they are trying to teach you, there is an insight. And once you have an insight into yourself, you start living your life differently. So you have a spontaneous change. It's like growing out of your old clothes. You can no longer fit into your clothes, which you could fit into when you were 10 years old, right? Nobody can, because it's just, we can't, physically can't. And that's how the mind works. Once you learn a beautiful thing, once you learn an insight, you can't go back to it. There is no going back to the old stuff. There's no making that mistake. See, once you fully understand, you will not get into a relationship, for instance, with the wrong person. So that's basically the process. That's what self-awareness is. Awareness of your own thoughts, your own conditioning, your own influences, your own belief systems. Because certain things I keep doing because I believe in them. Somebody told me to believe in them, and so on and so forth. And it's quite vast and quite complex, quite detailed, but that's the general gist of it.
Interesting. I mean, one of the things that I can grasp, right, from my own personal experiences that I've seen is when we have that kind of an experience where you've made a huge mistake or something bad happened to you, even though that was not maybe your fault. That's when we kind of hit rock bottom, and then we start asking these questions, not when everything is going good or everything is right around us. But for someone who wants to discover themselves, like, one thing I understand from the conversation that we're having is asking those questions is what kind of is like peeling those layers of ourselves to kind of
Mhm.
know who we truly are.
Yes.
But in this specific scenario, when someone wants to explore this, uh, try to get to know themselves, what would be the process? Like, first, where should the person begin? Asking questions, yes. But then what are the other processes? Is there an environment that a person should be in or associate uh, people with? What are your thoughts?
So there is there are various angles from which this needs to be approached. Okay, not just watching your thoughts, because watching your thoughts will not lead to correct results. Mainly because we are already under the influence of those thoughts. So this is also part of self-inquiry. So for instance, somebody might listen to this and say, okay, I'm afraid of going into work. So I'm going to observe my fear of going into work. But you're already afraid. So how is a fearful mind going to observe fear? You can't. See, because it's like trying to observe something in motion while you are in motion. You don't know how it's moving because your frame of reference is not steady. So first we need to have a steady frame of reference, okay? Which means I need to have an objective way of looking at my own mind. Which means what? Which means I have to become completely quiet. I have to find earth. I have to find grounding. I have to find rooting. How do I do that? So we begin with a very simple form of meditation, which is I sit in one place quietly. And once I sit in one place quietly, I stop moving my body because my body and my mind are kind of in flux all the time. My physical motions are creating random thoughts, and my random thoughts cause more physical motions. So first I sit quietly. Once I sit quietly, then the next thing I do is I take even breaths. I take 5 or 6 breaths a minute. I would say 6-second exhales, 5-second inhales, or 5-second exhales and 4-second inhales, depending on your body type, etc., etc. Once I start holding a particular breathing pattern, what happens is my heart rate comes down. When my heart rate comes down, my mind becomes steady. See, now I'm moving closer and closer to objective observation. Then what I do is, for the next 5 minutes, I pay attention to all the sounds around me. The sounds in my house, maybe there's a fan running in the background, somebody talking, someone watching TV, dogs barking, cars running by outside the house. I pay attention to raw physical sounds in my environment. In India, growing up in Mumbai, is plenty of sounds to pay attention to. So what I'm doing is I'm coming into my body. See, most people don't live in their bodies. Most of us live in our minds. And we think that my problems need to be solved in my mind. No, first you need to exit the mind. Put the mind aside. Don't try to solve the work problem, relationship problem, whatever problem you have by thinking about it. First, you need to have physical awareness, become physically deeply rooted to raw physical reality. When we do that, which is first sitting still, then listening, then paying attention to the sensations in different parts of our body. So I will start at the extremities. I'll start at my toe tips, for instance, and I will ask myself, or anybody who's listening, for instance, what is the sensation you have in the big toe of your left foot? What sensation do you have there? Have you ever noticed it? Or it's just kind of existing in an abyss? See, there's a blindness about our physical sensations we have. There are parts of our body which just exist, which we have no idea that we have them. So we have to awaken our body. So pay attention to that first big toe. And as you pay attention, without moving it, sensation of aliveness will start coming into it. Then move on to the second toe of your left foot, and it gets much harder. See, now you have no idea. It feels like you don't have a second toe if you don't move your leg, right? And what about the third toe? Now it's completely gone. So practice for 5 to 10 minutes, paying attention to your bodily sensations. Pay attention to how your heart is beating. If you can be sensitive enough that you can feel your heartbeat on a crowded market street, and how crowded a market street is, how noisy it is in a metropolitan city in India. If you can feel your heart beating and the pulsation and the change of pressure that goes outwards from the heart to your hands and to your legs, now you have heartbeat awareness. Now you can connect with your body, connect with your heartbeat. So that's a second thing, that's a third thing you do. Then in my meditation, what I do is I train my sounds, I train my sensations, and now I'm going to train my sight. So I open my eyes. I'm still sitting in meditation. I open my eyes and I start looking around the room. Just look around your own room, wherever you are sitting in your bedroom. And as you look around, try to find something that you have not seen before in your own bedroom. crack on the wall, an ant walking by somewhere. See, if you have pets, you will see pet hair all over your room. Something that you have not noticed in your own bedroom. Heck, you will see things which you haven't noticed on your own palms. If you turn your hands over and look carefully at your own palms, turn them over and look at your own hands, the back of your hand, and you'll see bruises and marks and cuts and scrapes from years and years ago, which you haven't noticed. See, so there is so much to see in our immediate physical environment which we haven't seen. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a strong body awareness, which means now when I see my thoughts, I understand my thoughts because now I'm objective. See, now I'm in a place where I'm not constantly kicked around by my emotions. So this is the first thing. This is just meditation. We are still meditating. See, so this is the first thing you have to practice every single day. Then what you do is after this meditation is done, you open up, take a book. My journal is right here. Take a book, piece of paper or whatever, and write your thoughts. Whatever thoughts are coming after this meditation, write them down. Because putting your thoughts on paper supercharges your awareness. You become extremely focused on whatever you wrote in your journal. This is called journaling. Journaling is a very powerful practice. Everybody should do journaling. Doesn't matter what you write, just write. You will figure it out. As journaling progresses, eventually you come to a place where you practice writing about affirmations, writing about things that you want, things that pull you towards them. That is, if you are trying to start a business, you write about how you want to do your business. If you want to change your jobs, you write about how you want to change your job. If you want to change the way your health is, if you want to lose weight, etc., you write about that. You want to change your diet, you write about that. Whatever you write, throughout the day, your awareness gets latched onto that thing. You become sensitive to that thing. If opportunities arise, your mind becomes sensitive. So this is the environment which creates change. Meditation every morning, journaling right after meditation. Then the third thing becomes, as you brought up, what about the people in your life? See, people are a crucial aspect of our life, but we don't know how to deal with our relationships. I like to say most people don't have relationships at all. Okay, we don't have parents, we are not relationships. Those are not relationships. Why? Because we relate to the people in our life as if they were static objects. Like for instance, there is a Buddha statue behind me. You can see it. And there's two actually, one here and one there. And every single time I come into this room, okay, I sense that the statues are here. Okay. And that's my relationship to these statues. They haven't moved. They haven't changed the way they look. There is no aspect of them that has undergone a transformation. And I have a relationship with them. See, is that a relationship really? Or is that me just relating to a static object? Most of us relate to people in our lives as static objects stored in our memory. See, so when I relate to my mom, I have an image of my mother. And I'm talking to that image. I'm not talking to my mother as she is now. I'm talking to how my mother has been for the past 30 years or 20 years or whatever, how she has raised me. I'm talking to that image. So everything she has done so far is there at the back of my mind, and I talk to that person. Which means even if this person has moved, even if my mom has had change in her thoughts, if she is having a different kind of a day, if she is worried, or if she is in a different state of mind, I'm insensitive to those things. I'm only talking to my past hurt, my past anger, or my past feelings about her. Even so with your partner. Say you don't talk to your partners, you talk to an image you have about your partner. And which is me relating to these objects, these statues behind me, as if they were static objects. See, that's not a relationship at all. If I relate to somebody as if they are a dead object, then I'm relating to them as if they were already dead. So most of us have these relationships not with other people, but with ourselves. because I am relating not to the person as they are now. I'm relating to the image I have stored of them in my mind. So I'm relating to myself, even though I'm talking to my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to my memory of them. I'm talking to the past experiences of them that I have stored in my memory. So that's not a relationship. See? So if you put it aside and you look at them and you realize, my goodness, it's a beautiful person in front of me. And all the images and all the memories about them just melt away. And you look at them and you feel this strangeness, as if you're seeing them for the very first time, as if there's something new about them. Now you're having a relationship. Now you're really paying attention. Now you're really listening. So that's what you want to do with your relationships. You want to restart every single relationship you have. Restart from scratch. And I don't mean, okay, I'm going to pick up the phone and call my ex-girlfriend or whatever. No, 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 no. Okay. We are not talking about that. We're talking about the people who are close to you, for your friends, your family, and how you relate to them. So we are creating a real foundation for understanding yourself and creating significant transformation in the way you're living your life. Makes sense? And there will always be people who you don't get along with. There will always be people who disagree with whatever you are doing. Understand what kind of interaction you want to have with them. And if it is necessary, you can remove yourself from those interactions. You don't have to shut people out, but don't be caught in a place where you're always trying to impress somebody. Don't be caught in a place where you're always trying to live up to somebody's expectations. Or when they are criticizing you, you are caught defending yourself. Nobody has time for that. Spend all your time on improving yourself, working on yourself, gathering knowledge, understanding yourself, not in trying to please people. Okay. And if you can't help but please people, then meditate about that. Why am I constantly trying to please people? What am I seeking from them? And so on and so forth.
Wow. I mean, there are so many things that you've covered in that answer. I mean, starting from meditation to the way we interact with our partners, family members. And I think it sounds more like then you are having a more deeper relationship with those people that we are talking to. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I could feel while we were talking, and I'm someone that when you were talking about, become aware of your food, the way you're breathing, the sounds, what you see on your wall, maybe an ant walking by, and so on, I could literally feel the ecstasy,
Yeah.
everything, right? Like how everything actually slowed down, how I just want to sit quietly and listen to what you have to say, right? Because I could sense, imagine, and I also understand why this would be helpful at the first day. As soon as you wake up and you do this, obviously our brains are in those alpha and gamma and all those beta it's more, we are more probed to receiving these uh radiations, or what do you typically call them, energies.
I don't deal with energies.
Hmm.
So I am a person who believes in extraordinary force of rationality. Okay. I don't believe that you need to have faith. You need to have belief systems. You need to have organized thought patterns, somebody teaching you a certain way of thinking, etc., in order to have deeply beautiful experiences in your life. And you also don't need to make up systems which are scientifically dubious, which do not align with evidence as observed in the scientific world. And even though I don't usually go into science, I take extra precautions that I don't violate science,
That's
that
a
I
good
don't.
that's a very important thing, and I want to ask you, when you say this, like scientifically dubious, and I want to be very rational, what exactly do you mean? What are the things that you've noticed sometimes contradict the rationality of things?
The thing is, I'm going to put ourselves on the spot. Now, we all come from India, And India has this deep culture of spirituality, this guru worship, following a certain person or that, this or that. And we become extremely angry if somebody points a finger at our religious sensitivities or our cultural sensitivities. And I want to ask people, what are you afraid of? If I say your favorite guru is an idiot, does it make you angry? If you're feeling angry, imagine your favorite guru, the person you follow. I don't know, I'm not going to take names. Many popular fellows in India. I'm calling that person an idiot. How does that make you feel? Makes you feel really angry, isn't it? Because we are so attached to them. Notice that. You're so attached to that person, that this person's ideas are so amazing. They have done so much research. They are enlightened. And they have read so many books, and they have this long 3 feet beard or whatever, and they look like a guru, so they must be enlightened. Or why would somebody sacrifice their lives, etc., etc.? Which is nonsense, by the way, because you only have to look at their bank accounts and they realize they haven't sacrificed anything. And the best way to become a rich guru in India is to create a foundation and tell the foundation to become rich in your name. And so you don't have to be rich. You can walk around wearing rags and say, I'm poor. But you, of course, you are not poor. You're filthy rich. You're not tricking anyone, at least not the rational thinkers. So observe all this and see, why am I attached to this person? And what comes out of this is there is a tremendous amount of security other people can give us when they talk about God, when they talk about enlightenment, when they talk about connecting with Atman, Brahman, supreme consciousness, universal intelligence, this or that. Some people will dilute that and say, oh, but we connect to these things through our religion. So like they'll say, oh, the Gita has the best ideas, or the Quran has the best ideas, or this has the best ideas, that has the best ideas. And all these interpretations, manners of looking evolved for various reasons based on the time they were born in, etc. But the beauty of it is we need none of it. We need none of these things. They are not essential. Because if you make these things essential, then you get attached to your own guru, you get attached to your own system, you get attached to your own religion, and then you want to cut the throat of the other guy who points a finger at your stuff. I mean, we can see it in India, so much division based on politics. Why? Because you're identified with your own way of thinking. Based on religion, because you're identified with your own particular approach to God. And not just India, but in the US too. All over the world, really. This is a human condition. I don't want to say Indians have it, but everybody has it. So we have to understand why we lean on other people for becoming the mediums through which we communicate with something beautiful, with something extraordinary. Why do you want a second person? Why do you want a middleman between you and God? Say this, such an accepted fact. I must have a middleman. Well, if you have a middleman, what's going to happen is you're going to fight to protect your middleman or a middle idea or person or ideology, right? And once you start fighting to protect it, you have lost it. You have lost the end result. Then you have become somebody who is afraid. As you are afraid, when I say your favorite guru is an idiot, as you're angry, so now you're angry. You have nothing, you have lost it. You have lost whatever the guru is offering because you just got angry. See? And so throw away all of this and rely on yourself. Rely on your own individual way of conducting this intense self-inquiry into the nature of your own being, without relying on energies, frequencies, vibrations, without relying on ancient books, without relying on ancient people and their ideas, spiritual teachers, none of it. You don't want to rely on anybody. The only person you want to rely on is your own self and your own powers of observation, and understanding. If you can do that, okay, if you can do that, which means you can build a mental model that works for you, which is based on rational thought, which is not based on a belief system of fear or aggression or justification of any kind, then you will have a tremendous amount of power in your own personal life. Because now you are not fighting anyone. And when you're fighting anyone, you are really weak. See, you're really weak because you're trying to protect something which is so dear to you, whether it's a thought pattern or ideology, as we said. But if you're not protecting anything, you're completely fearless, aren't you? Like I personally don't feel any offense. I challenge anyone to come face to face with me and call me an idiot, my mother an idiot, my father an idiot. My I don't have a spiritual teacher, but if I had one, to call them any, I don't care. I'm not attached to anything. You
I
can do
like
whatever you.
I
Huh?
like what you've just mentioned, because I also see that oftentimes, we are tying ourselves to a group ideology, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
Mhm.
detaching from them, I know, can be really problematic. People, because their identity, they're associating that self to that specific thing that we're just talking about, right? So how can someone, even let's say someone wants to, because I know this is very powerful what you've just mentioned, right? If people can literally detach groupism and really dive deeper into themselves to actually discover whatever you believe in. I mean, I think I'm someone who believes that if you are born in certain family, religion, whatever be it, you should discover it yourself rather than
Mhm.
relying on something. Like, you have to discover everything for yourself. So how can people detach themselves from what they believe in, probably, and discover things for themselves? You've done it, so what are your thoughts there?
So I would use a different word. I wouldn't use the word detach, because in the instant you say, okay, you must detach from your group, it brings up fear. No, somebody's asking me to detach from my group. Why should I detach from my group? The thing is, you don't have to detach from your group. You have to observe the attachment to your group. Because the opposite of attachment isn't attachment. The opposite of attachment is freedom. So when you observe how you're attached, which means what? Which means how you are caught up in self protection, in violence, in being offended by every small thing somebody says, how you're really suffering because you have identified yourself with a group. Okay. And if you don't feel you're suffering, somebody might say, oh, the group brings me great mental peace. I feel like I am with like-minded people, and I'm associated with them, etc. And why should I uh, change that? Who is going to take care of me if I leave the group? Fine, don't leave the group. Make your own choice. Don't leave the group. Observe what's going on with your group. If you have a group which is based on fear, a collective fear, which makes people come together to save a cause or whatever, observe how they're willing to become violent to protect that cause. And if you are a part of a group that is willing to become violent to protect itself, you have to ask yourself, do you want to associate yourself with that kind of group? Because when you are violent, what happens is you threaten somebody else, don't you? And when you threaten somebody else, that person has to protect themselves. When that person or that group or that ideology starts protecting itself, now you feel threatened. And so now you have to escalate. So you get caught up in this subconscious escalation of violence, where the ground reality is you have no enmity with anybody. But the instant you go into this group, you become a part of an army of sorts. Why? You know, there's no point in it. So you have to ask yourself, if you want to be a source of anger, fear, violence, and this misery in the world, or you want to become a force of healing, a force of happiness, force of connection. Because human beings are all the same. no matter where you go, all over the world, no matter what religion you follow, what group you are a part of, what country you're a part of. I've spoken to people from, I would say, 70 different countries, and I've had deep conversations with them. I've had more than 500 conversations with people. And I can tell you with a high degree of confidence that at the subconscious level, every human being is the same. Superficially, you will see differences. Oh, they dress this way, they talk this way, they have a certain accent, they have a certain skin color. And I've spoken to people from Africa, to people in Sweden, to people in Canada, to you name it, Austria, Hungary, Germany, everywhere, China, Japan, even Russia, Ukraine. I've spoken to people from all over the world. And when you talk to these people and when you ask them, what are you really afraid of? They will tell you different things. But when you ask them, how does fear feel to you? How does fear feel to you? The way they describe it is exactly the same as a poor person, a poor farmer from Indian village would describe it. No difference. I've spoken to people, I mean, this is just telling you what it is. Coming from all walks of life, the person I spoke to, one of the people I spoke to, had a net worth of $100 million, a very wealthy person. I don't know how they ended up on me, but I happened to speak to them. And I've spoken to several people who are extremely rich. And the way they feel fear is exactly the same as someone who is extremely poor, coming from some poor village in Africa or in India. Exactly the same. No difference. The way they feel desire is exactly the same. The way they feel pain is exactly the same. So forget about religion. It's all so silly, stupid, so superficial. Human beings, regardless of where they are born on earth, feel emotions the same way. So if you can touch with somebody, if you can connect with someone at that level of the subconscious mind, where you can bring it out in people, even from a stranger, you speak to a stranger and you listen to them so intensely that you have a deep connection with them and you're able to touch their pain, their sorrows, their fears, their desires in their lives, you realize they are absolutely not different from you. In fact, you may even realize you're the same person. And that, my friend, is compassion. I like this quote somewhere, I read somewhere, I think it's from Ramdas, but I mean, I've said the same thing. He said it better. Empathy is feeling somebody else's pain. Compassion is knowing that you are the same person as that person. And so you are feeling your own pain. So you realize that I want to be connected to that. I want to be a person who has this connection with the whole of humanity, not with my stupid little group, okay, which does some things and speeches or whatnot, and we get together and we celebrate and congratulate each other and pat our own backs and whatnot. Yeah, it's fine for some time well spent on the weekend, but I want to spiritually, deeply, emotionally, at the level of my soul, align myself with the whole of humanity. See, and see what happens once you commit to that.
Hmm. One of the things that I think, which is pretty important also based on the conversation that we're having, you mentioned fear, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is actually fear? Is that people might be afraid of something? First, how can they understand that they're obviously they are fearing, they don't even know this might be unconscious or subconscious, but how can people literally break free from a fear like that?
Fear is there because we experienced some kind of trauma, some kind of pain in the past, and the mind doesn't want to repeat that pain. That's what fear is. So if I'm afraid of going into work, let's say, I'm afraid of going into work because the last time I went into work, or a few months ago, or whenever my boss insulted me in front of a bunch of people, in front of my colleagues, or my boss is very critical of me, blames me, etc., and I have no power in that situation. In a work situation, I have no power. So I feel traumatized by that experience. And because I feel traumatized by that experience, I don't want to go to work anymore. I don't want to go and have that conversation anymore because my mind is trying to avoid the past pain. And that's what fear is. Fear is avoidance of past pain. If we don't have past pain, there is no fear associated with that particular thing. A way to rise above fear is something we have to go into. It's a different meditation altogether. But what we have to realize is fear is trying to tell me that a past experience is about to repeat itself. What it is not telling me is the person who experiences, the person who is going to undergo this experience has already changed. See, so when I go into work today, if my boss yelled at me yesterday, my fear tells me, oh, he's going to yell at me exactly the way he yelled at me yesterday. But what it doesn't tell me is that when I experience it again, let's say I do experience it again, let's say I go in and he again yells at me. The person who is going to experience it is different. It's not the same. I have undergone experiences since yesterday. Generally, if you understand this happened a few months ago, then it's easier to understand. But it applies even if it happened yesterday, because we have undergone experiences, we have collected life experiences which have changed us as a human being. So even if the same experience happens again, listen to this carefully. Even if my boss yells at me again, the ears that listen to it are different. And therefore, my reaction, my response to that fear is going to be different. What I'm actually afraid of is the old me undergoing the old experience as I underwent it the last time, which means my fear is a hallucination. Fear is a hallucination. That's why understand that even though you go through the experience, let's say you're afraid of giving a speech on the stage, okay, or giving a presentation at work, and you undergo that, and you come home in the evening and you said, okay, I gave that speech, or I gave that presentation at work. If you remember how that experience was, it was nothing like you expected it to be. You anticipated, prepared. But when the actual experience happened, it was somehow totally different. People know this, people who go through operations, medical procedures, they prepare to go through the medical procedure. And when the procedure happens, it's something totally different. So our anticipation is trying to stop us from experiencing past pain. But the future is completely unknown. This is mind-blowing stuff, if you really think about it. When I understood this, I stopped preparing myself before entering any situations. Like when I enter conversations, when I give presentations or whatever, I give talks, I have one at 1:00 today. I don't prepare at all. I just show up completely unprepared, because I realized that preparation actually sets me back. Preparation creates fear. Preparation creates a build-up. I'm hesitating. What am I going to say now? What am I going to say now? What's going to happen now? And when the thing happens, it's totally different. So see, you have to understand that fear is a hallucination, and there is many other things about fear we can talk about. But this is the fundamental realization that each one of us has to come to. That my fear is a hallucination and I can let it go. And when I let it go, start flowing with life, which is I meet unknown situations totally unprepared. So I like to tell people, don't prepare to hold on, but unprepare and let go. Let go totally. Stumble through life. Life will teach you how to live. Be willing to stumble through. See,
I'm sure people that are listening to us, right? What you just mentioned is deep, but at the same time, people who are just thinking about not preparing, they might be getting goosebumps right now, saying,
yeah, let them get goosebumps. That's exactly what. That's exactly it. You feel that that's the precipice. That, oh, what will happen if I don't prepare? This hesitation, this shaking, stay there. Don't run from it. Stay there
hmm,
because it will go away if you stay on it. But most people cannot tolerate that. That hesitation, that feeling of uncertainty, everybody runs away from it. And you run away from that hesitation, you will keep facing fear for the rest of your life. But remain on that precipice. Stay there. Hesitate, shake, shiver, whatever, sweat. Doesn't matter. Stay there.
wow, deep. I
Once,
love it.
yeah, once it goes, then the flow begins. And oh boy, once the flow begins, my goodness, you become powerful. There's nothing
Nice.
stopping you after that. There's nothing stopping you. You go into an office meeting and you speak to your manager like you are his boss or their boss or her boss. He's,
Wow. Yeah. Now I know, we are coming to the end, but there is one, at least one, because this conversation can go on, because I
yeah,
see the kind of thing that we're discussing. But there is one thing which I know will definitely benefit the listeners, and a lot of young folks probably might be going through this. So I want to understand, when someone is going through a rough patch, maybe they've had a breakup, something bad happened, maybe now they are feeling anxious and they are getting depressed, right? So what can people do to come out of this kind of situation?
you have to understand that what you're feeling is a breaking of attachment. You're not feeling real love. Sorry, that's how it is. Most of what we are feeling is a breaking of attachment because our identities are connected to this person who just left our life for whatever reason. And when that happens, you feel as if you are being torn from inside. And this feeling, I'm sure many can identify with that, but you feel as if you are being torn in half from top to bottom because a part of you is now going away. Well, you made them a part of you, but they aren't a part of you. They are a separate individual with their separate reality who, who sees the world differently. Put yourself in their vision, put yourself in their world for an instance, and you'll experience an alternate universe. They see the exact same situation differently. That's why you are no longer together. What you have to now discover is what is your identity apart from that individual? Who are you without their influence? It takes a while. It takes a while to have that mental dialogue come back to you because you keep hearing their voice, you keep hearing their thoughts and all that. This is identification in the deepest form. So you've got to find your own voice back, which means spend time alone. Don't try to drink it away or distract yourself from the pain. Meditate, go for long walks, read good books, spend time alone. Start connecting with yourself, rediscover who you are without this individual. And the next time you find yourself to be in an opportunity in a relationship, make sure you don't jump in head first unless you are fully healed from the previous one. Okay, most people will fall into a new relationship after the first one is done because it makes them feel better, because there's physical intimacy and this and that and sexual pleasure and all that. Don't forget the pain, because if you don't completely fix in the sense, completely understand what happened in the previous relationship, if you don't find closure in yourself, you don't have to find closure with them, you have to find closure in yourself. If you don't do that, then you're not taking the wisdom from the first relationship into the second. Okay, you're only taking the mistakes, the errors, the confusion, the pain, the fear, the sorrow from the first into the second. And if you take all these things into the second, then you are going to create more of it. For some other reason, for the same reason, or whatever, the same patterns will repeat. And another breakup, another separation will happen. and you will find yourself in the same spot as you find yourself now. And you will have to do the work at some point. Might as well do it now without hurting yourself or other people. So this is a great time. This is a great place to be, because you're now you're coming together as a different person. You're broken into different pieces, but now when you connect together, you're now coming together as a new person. And you got to celebrate that.
Interesting. Wow, I mean, there are so many things that I still have on my mind, but I know the time does not permit, and probably we'll have another session of this sometime planned. But before we wrap the interview, I wanna ask for my audience listeners, if they wanna reach out to you, what are some means that they can find you?
So you can follow me on Instagram or YouTube. Just look up Finding Awareness. And yeah, if you want to reach out to me, you can send me a DM on Instagram or leave comments on the page. And I usually respond to almost all the comments. That's pretty much it. If they want to dive deeper into these ideas, and they can look up my book on Amazon. If they're interested, go through it. It's also on Audible. It's called Finding Awareness, The Journey of Self-Discovery. That's about it. Thank you for having me here.
Awesome. It was a pleasure, Amit, having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.